Good evening, everyone. I am honored to celebrate Filipino-American History Month with you, my fellow California Democrats. My name is Nate Epstein, and I'm proud to be chair of the Filipino-American Democratic Caucus of our California Democratic Party, because our state not only represents the largest population of Filipinos in the United States, but is where Filipinos first stepped foot in the continental United States. Filipino-American History Month is more than just a mark on the calendar. It is a time to celebrate, remember, and renew more efforts to research and document Filipino-American history in order to provide all Americans an opportunity to learn and appreciate more about Filipino-Americans and their historic contributions to our nation. The celebration of Filipino-American History Month in October commemorates the first recorded presence of Filipinos in the continental United States, which occurred on October 18, 1587, when Filipinos came ashore and landed at what is now Morro Bay, California. In 2009, the United States Congress recognized October as Filipino-American History Month. Filipino-American history is about an unshakable faith in the promise of America that guided Filipinos to America's shores, despite suffering setbacks and challenges, many because of the color of their skin or their country of origin, instead of the content of their character. In their pursuit of the American dream, they came with optimism, heads held high, and laid down roots, building our country into the beacon of hope it is today. Filipino-American history, from the Monongs who toiled in the agricultural fields of California, those that served in our armed forces, our frontline nurses, and the college students who demonstrated, demanded, and prevailed to have Filipino and Asian American ethnic studies fought to be taught by professors who looked like them, demonstrates how Filipino Americans have prevailed against racism and discrimination. It is fitting that we are gathered here shortly after the 56th anniversary of the Delano grape strike, which was led by Filipino labor greats such as Larry Itliong. Yesterday, October 25th, is recognized as Larry Itliong Day, as proclaimed by Governor Gavin Newsom, who also recently inducted Larry Itliong into the California Hall of Fame 2 weeks ago. Larry Itliong immigrated to the United States and immediately began working as a farm laborer in the salmon canneries of Alaska. He later moved to Stockton, while he recruited more than 1,000 new members to join the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee. Union leaders asked him to leave for Delano to organize Filipino grape workers at the Filipino Hall to vote to go on strike. The next day, the Delano grape strike began, and more than 2,000 Filipino farm workers, members of AWOC, marched off the vineyards demanding $1.40 an hour, 25 cents a box, and the right to form a union. Larry Itliong soon contacted the great Cesar Chavez and asked Mexican farm workers to join the strike. Cesar Chavez, along with Dolores Huerta and the National Farm Workers Association, joined the Filipinos. And a year later, AWC and NFWA merged to become the United Farm Workers. It is the Monongs and Monongs who led these movements that instilled in us the will to fight for our rights in our community. FADC is an extension of the Filipino farm labor movement. The history of FADC runs deep in the Democratic Party, with the same labor leader setting the stage for Filipino Americans nationally. And with the shadow of hate and violence of our people, we must be united in our purpose, more so now than ever. We need to elevate our Filipino leaders. On Monday, the Filipino Caucus announced our upcoming campaign workshop and mentorship programs. Our goal as a caucus is to elevate leaders within our Filipino community to continue the hard work that started with those that came before us. We will work together with the goal of promoting our community and continue to teach the importance of our history in California and the importance of simply getting involved. It is one of our very own that has truly served as an inspiration for many of us. Earlier this year, Governor Gavin Newsom appointed Rob Bonta to serve as California's Attorney General. As a Filipino attorney myself, it was truly a momentous occasion to see one of our own standing beside Governor Newsom, representing all Californians in our fight for justice. With that, I would like to introduce California's Attorney General, Rob Bonta, to give his remarks.
California Democrats, it's Rob Bonta, California Attorney General. Thank you, CDP and the Filipino-American Caucus for hosting us tonight. Happy Filipino-American History Month. Maraming salamat kababayan and mabuhay. For too long, Our community has gone overlooked. We've been undervalued. Not anymore. The world is beginning to learn more about the artistic, social, legal, scholarly, and cultural contributions of Filipino Americans. Filipino American history is Californian history. From the first Filipinos who sailed here over 400 years ago, 33 years before the Mayflower, to the Manongs and Manangs who led the farm workers movement, to the change makers of today, fighting for racial, economic, environmental, and social justice. Our story is important. As the first Filipino-American legislator in California's history and our state's first Filipino-American attorney general, this month is especially important to me. When I was in the legislature, it was my privilege to author AB 123, which requires our public schools to teach our history, our contribution to California's farm labor movement. And one of my proudest moments in the Assembly was when my bill to establish October 25th as Larry Itliong Day was signed into law, to ensure one of our many Filipino-American heroes is honored every year. This month, we honor our history. We honor our culture and heritage. We honor our ancestors and their sacrifices that live on through us and power us forward today. As progressives and as Filipinos, we are a community that fights for all communities. We step up, from nurses to neuroscientists, chefs to CEOs, bakers to business owners. We are change makers making a difference, writing the next chapter in our long and storied history. Happy Filipino-American History Month. See you soon, Democrats.
Thank you again to our great Attorney General Bonta. I would now like to introduce the moderator for our panel discussion this evening, Alex de Ocampo. Alex is a Democratic strategist with more than 25 years of experience in philanthropy and advising local, state, and federal campaigns. He's also the co-founder of the Filipino Voter Empowerment Project. Everyone, Alex.
Hey everyone, Alex de Ocampo here. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to be your moderator and a host of this exciting conversation this evening in celebration of Filipino-American History Month. We are here to honor the history of service and sacrifice of our Filipino-American community. As we move forward, we continue to welcome and rejoice the future accomplishments for our youth. For me, as many of my family members work in healthcare and continue to be on the front lines of this pandemic, it's important that we recognize our community's contributions and sacrifices. So for tonight, with regard to this discussion, let's celebrate our culture and contributions, as well as sprinkle in some discussions about our political experience here in California. Let this conversation inspire us all. Okay, so let's jump into it. So I'd love to now introduce Jessica Caloza. She is recording secretary for the California Democratic Party, Asian Pacific Islander Caucus, and board member and immediate past president of Filipino-American Los Angeles Democrats. Jessica was appointed by LA Mayor Eric Garcetti in 2019 to serve on the board of Public Works, the oversight body of almost 6,000 employees responsible for delivering critical services and infrastructure projects. She's the first Filipino-American commissioner in this role. So Jessica, as you are the former president of Filipino Los Angeles Democrats, can you highlight some of your grassroots efforts you did to reach out to the Filipino community in 2020?
Thanks so much, Alex. First and foremost, just want to thank you for moderating this discussion. Thank you to the party and also for having ASL interpretation in both English and in Filipino. I can't stress how important that is. And I just want to thank you for having us today. In terms of what we've done in this past year around grassroots and mobilizing, as if a pandemic wasn't enough, so many communities, especially local Democratic clubs, had to make that shift to the virtual world, making sure that we could still reach voters, to make elections accessible, to make the policies and programs that we're promoting be available in other languages. And that's one of the key partnerships that I know the Filipino-American LA Democrats, also known as PALAD, and shout out to the board members and the LA contingency I see in the audience. In working with the API caucus and the Filipino-American caucus, this partnership is really important to make it as accessible as possible for all of our voters. So hosting virtual phone banks, making materials accessible online, because we're not able to do that face-to-face contact that we know is so important. And so trying to make it meaningful and relevant and having that online programming has been a really critical shift to not just the 2020 presidential elections and national, state, and local elections, but also the recall that I know so many of us work really hard to defeat. And to support leaders who care about people that look like us, that sound like us, that speak different languages, like Governor Newsom and Attorney General Bonta. They have our back and we have theirs, whether it's a recall or a presidential or next year during a midterm. So just really proud to be here on behalf of the Filipino-American LA Democrats and on behalf of the API caucus, where I serve as a recording secretary. And thank you to our chair as well, Deepa Sharma. I want to give a shout out to her. She's the first South Asian chair that we've had on this caucus, and her leadership has been immense at including the diversity of all Asian communities under the API caucus umbrella. So thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Now we're going to jump over to Melissa Ramoso. Melissa, thank you for joining us. So in November 2018, Melissa was elected as the first Asian Pacific Islander female to the Artesia City Council. In December 2020, Melissa was appointed by her peers to serve as Mayor Pro Tem. She is District Director for Assemblymember Al Marasucci. She also serves as Senior Advisor for she served as an advisor for U.S. Congressman Ted Lieu for many years. So Melissa, once again, thank you for joining us. As Mayor Pro Tem of Artesia, can you describe to the audience what made you decide to seek public office?
Yes, thank you, Alex, and thank you to the party for welcoming me back out of retirement. I'm still kind of on the board with the API caucus, so I'm glad to see Jessica on the board and Nate, who's chair of the caucus I used to serve. So thank you to the party for always being an advocate for our community and hosting this space for us. It's an honor to be with all of you on this panel celebrating the Filipino-American History Month. So to what wasn't mentioned in my bio from Alex, I come from a long line of public servants. My parents were both members to their respective unions, SEIU, APWU, and also served in the military. So all my life, I have known to serve others. I am a legislative staffer, and over the years, Democratic community leaders such as the late Honorable Lillian Kawasaki of LADWP, former Assembly member and LA Public Works Commissioner Warren Fortani, and brother, former mayor of Cerritos, Mark Polito, who's in the chat and always your biggest cheerleader, all planted seeds early that I would listen to, but then could no longer ignore. All the tools that I learned from being a staffer and learning everything from my former great boss, Congressman Ted Lieu and Mayor Mark Polito. It was actually Mark who I owe a debt of gratitude to for helping me understand the meaning of serving and in the capacity of a Filipino-American leader. He told me, if it isn't you, Melissa, who will it be? Then it stuck. And I ran once, and then I ran twice, and then I won. You know, Filipino-American history recognizes who have been here before any of us on this panel. Those who are recent to the party and politics stand on their shoulders. Very much of why I am an elected stems from seeking the party and joining the ranks. I wanted to learn and know our history because it would be a disservice if we don't understand why we are here. The most important people that matter are those that do not sit on this panel. And it was alluded to by saying the grassroots efforts of like our local Democratic Club. We must be the translators for others to understand the importance of democratic values. It's not our titles, who we work for, what we are appointed to, or elected to. It's about grassroots and the success of this party. So this service and political drive has enabled me to help my residents have a better quality of life and be their voice at the municipal level. It's one of the greatest honors for me to do is serve the residents of my city. And all the while, I know my entire Filipino and Filipino-American community are watching nationally and globally. If I could spark any inspiration in any young Philam, the youth, or anyone, I know I'm doing something right. So I never knew I'd be in this position, but I'm deeply honored, and hopefully soon I can become mayor come December.
Thank you so much, Melissa. So Aki had a bit of an emergency and won't be able to join us. So Nathaniel Epstein, or Nate Epstein, will be joining us. So Nate, as you know, is a healthcare attorney, and he's also the chair of the Filipino-American Democratic Caucus for the state party. So, and we are happy to have him here. And Nate, thank you for jumping in. We are truly appreciative for you to participate in this panel last minute. So my question to you is, can you describe some of the work that you are continuing to do to outreach to the Filipino-American community here in the state as caucus chair, and some of the work that you also did in 2020 for the elections?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And, you know, it's very important that we continue the work that we started in 2020. Luckily, I was I was the California co-chair with Mayor Justin Manalo of Filipinos-American for Biden-Harris. And so we organized phone banks, we worked with other states, we called into other states, we did everything we could to get our president elected and to get the other president out of office. So I'm grateful for that effort. I learned a lot, and we learned a lot. And it was the first time we had a national coalition of Filipinos to help in a presidential campaign like that. And it was truly amazing to see. And we had a whole bunch of friends and family and everyone across the country working together, united. And it was truly like awe-inspiring to see that. As caucus chair, one of the exciting things that I mentioned in my opening is that we're starting a candidate boot camp. The whole goal of my time as chair is to elevate leaders. We have so many leaders, including ones on this call, other people listening in, and we need them to step up and have their voices heard so that people can look like us and talk like us and, you know, represent us the right way. And that's something that, you know, it may be lacking, but if you look around in California, we have over 100 Filipino Democratic appointed and elected leaders. And I don't think that that's highlighted enough. And I want to make sure that we highlight that. And someday I want it to be hundreds of Filipino-American leaders. And this panel and the people listening, I want you to keep doing what you're doing and have your voices heard. And if you want to get involved, we have our boot camp, we have our mentorship program. And that's something that I really look forward to. And you know, someday when we look back, I want people to talk about the leaders that have become leaders and who help elevate other leaders. And so that's what we're working on. Join us. We have a lot to do, but I very much look forward to it.
Thank you, Nate. Now, it is my honor to introduce someone, probably doesn't need an introduction, but we're going to give him an introduction either way. On December 10th, 2020, Todd Gloria was sworn in as the 37th mayor of the city of San Diego, America's 8th largest city and the 2nd largest in California. A third-generation San Diegan of Filipino, Native American, Puerto Rican, and Dutch descent, he's the first person of color and the first LGBTQ person to ever be elected the city's mayor. Mayor Gloria is a leading voice for ending chronic homelessness, meaningfully addressing California's housing affordability crisis, tackling climate change, and gun violence prevention. Thank you for being here, Mayor Gloria. So, as the first mayor of San Diego of Filipino descent, could you let our audience know how you got your first start in politics and government?
be happy to. And thanks for this opportunity. It's great to be with everyone, particularly in this month that celebrates our community. Actually, very similar to Melissa. I didn't come from a family of wealth. I think a lot of us can relate to that. And so it seems like if you can't go that route, then being a staffer is a good route to go. And that's what I did. I had the immense pleasure, honor of working for Congresswoman Susan Davis for many years. And beyond her, and she's a remarkable human being, many of you may know she retired from the Congress this past year. She taught me how to do this work. But I think importantly, what she did was bring me into rooms where I needed to be, where people started to see in me what I didn't see in myself, and really encouraged me to run. What I always like to take these opportunities to do is to encourage members of our community to resist the voice that's often in your head, which says that people like us can't serve in these offices, and know that you can. I was fortunate to have people like Susan and others who said, you fit the role, you can do this. And that was invaluable. And it got me to start considering it. And then when time came along that my city council seat was available, they had invested enough in me to the point where I was rejecting those voices in my head and said, no, I think I can. And I did, and I won. And I did that for a lot of things that Nate was just talking about. It wasn't just that personal encouragement of key individuals like my former boss, but it was also the investment of community members in things like candidate trainings, and giving me graduated responsibilities, volunteer opportunities, nonprofit boards, commissions and appointments. I worked my way up the ladder. And I would just say that that is continues to be a very effective way, particularly if you're not blessed with the resources that it seemingly takes to get into public office these days. There's a way for you to go out there and show people your talent, and they will respond, and they'll create a circumstance that I think is ideal. Not that you're saying that you want to run for office, but that people are encouraging you to run for office. And that's what happened in my situation, and the rest is history.
Thank you so much. So, Mayor Gloria, just to follow up with you, we just beat back a Republican recall, but we'll have elections up and down the state next year. Do you think we'll see more Filipinos on the ballot in 2022? And how can we build the bench of Filipino elected officials?
I have no doubt that we will. I mean, year over year, we continue to see the ranks of candidates grow. I think what we want to see is the ranks of elected officials to grow as well. And that's happening. But, you had my good friend Rob Bonta on to kick this off. And I would remind folks that Rob was the first Filipino-American to serve in the California State Legislature. I was the second. Both of us have moved on to other offices, which is to say that there isn't a member of our community currently in the legislature. And I think, Nate, you were saying at the very beginning, the huge numbers that we represent here in California, and that just seems wrong. And so my general advice would be, for those of us who are in positions of responsibility, create those pathways. As mayor of San Diego, I get the opportunity to appoint to dozens and dozens of commissions. And I would tell you with great pride that we have appointed a supermajority of people of color to my appointments, and a majority of females to the boards and commission appointments. So, we need to look out for our communities and make sure that the opportunities that we have, that we're remembering those who are part of our family. But beyond that, I think we have to be strategic. And really find those candidates that we can champion, that we can invest in, and that we can encourage, so that we restore some level of representation in Sacramento, and then expand it to Congress, to mayor's offices, to other places. But this doesn't just happen. You have to have people with talent and willingness, with very forgiving families. But it really does take a community to make that investment. And this is where I would say so many of you invested in me. Most of you don't live in San Diego, but even from far away, you were encouraging me, sending me your moral support, your financial support. It got me here. We need a similar focused effort to break ground and to reclaim ground that we have lost in recent election cycles.
Thank you so much. I'm going to jump to some of the other panelists here. So Melissa, wanted to get your thoughts on what the Phil-Am community should be advocating for in the state of for our families that are still struggling during this pandemic, and what should we do to honor Phil-Am frontliners that left us too soon?
Thank you so much, Alex. Yeah, Democrats who toil every day to make a difference for our lolas, and our children and others, we should definitely tip our hat to them during this month and actually honor them from the beginning of this pandemic. We should never forget our community, and most especially our frontline workers. At minimum, us on this panel should be organizing on their behalf. If we don't, it'd be a shame to their legacy. We need to advocate for a congressional reconciliation bill that would make investments in childcare, immigration, and even climate change programs, all important issues for our family, the party, and our future. Also, we need to help advocate for infrastructure package that honors their work. At the state level, I have been behind the scenes talking to our respective API nonprofits, such as PwC, ASIPA, and many others about the recent API equity budget that was granted, and now in the next phase of shifting hundreds and thousands of dollars into respective organizations. The budget grant is open to everyone and not just actually API orgs. So if we're not cognizant in seeking the funding, other organizations who are commonly given this money to will receive it and leave our community unspoken for. So continued advocacy and awareness is critical at this time.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for that answer. I'm going to ask this joint question, and it's for Nate and for Jessica as well. It sort of goes hand in hand. So for Nate, as the chair of the Phil-Am caucus or the state party, and during this pandemic, did you change a lot of your organizing tactics as you reached out to the community due to COVID? And Jessica, did you find that the pandemic required Paulette to change its approach? So Nate, if you wanted to kick it off.
Yeah, I mean, the one nice thing, if you could call it nice, about the pandemic was that, like right now, we've all learned how to use Zoom. And so it's a lot easier to organize everyone statewide, because when we'd have, conventions in Northern California, the Northern California coalition's there, but not the Southern California, and vice versa. But with Zoom, we're able to have calls more often. I don't know if the board appreciates that or not, but we're all able to get on a Zoom call, see each other face to face as much as we can, and put these programs and ideas into motion. And so if there's one blessing out of this whole pandemic, is that even though we've been separated in person, I think digitally, we've all gotten a little bit closer, because we're all able to jump on together and share ideas and kind of move forward. So that's one of the good things that came out of the pandemic that has definitely helped us organize things a lot better.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Nate. Jessica?
Thanks, Alex. Just add on to what Nate mentioned as well. All the transition to the virtual world has been good in some regards, in that we're able to organize countywide, statewide, nationally, and that's been incredibly helpful for building our community coalition and just empowering more people. And I think at the same time, it exposed some of other aspects, right? Like people who may not have access to internet, or sometimes when we have a Zoom and maybe we didn't get a translator for people that actually understand what we're saying, or we didn't get transcriptions done. That said, I think what I'm most hopeful for is that problems that are being exposed during the pandemic, we're actively trying to find solutions for them. And I think that's what I find the most heartwarming about being a part of the California Democratic Party, about being part of the API caucus, and about part of being Filipino, part on the board of being the Filipino-American LA Democrats, is that there's so many problems that we're uncovering during the last 19 months, but we're looking for solutions, whether or not we have a budget to do it, whether or not we know how to get this done. We're making it happen, because we know that representation is an active fight. As Nate mentioned, we just celebrated Larry Itliong Day yesterday, and we're still fighting to remember his legacy and the legacies of so many Filipinos and Filipinas whose names and whose stories we have yet to hear. And that's really what this conversation is about, in using October as not only a moment to celebrate, but a moment to reflect and ask ourselves, what's next? What can we do together? And I think one of the biggest takeaways that I hope, if you're listening and watching, that you take away from this is that we need to continue to build our pipeline by investing in the organizations that we have. And that means being a part of the API caucus and becoming a member. That means being part of the Filipino-American Democratic Caucus and being a member of PALAD, being a member of the Filipino Action Center. And I'll plug this for Aki, because I know that's a new 501c4 that she started with your help, Alex. These are the organizations that we as a community need to rally around, because these are the organizations that are doing the programming, that are organizing voters, that are working with a party to host events like this. And so I hope you all become a member of all these 4 organizations that I mentioned and so much more, because it's going to take all of us to break more glass ceilings, because you heard a lot of first. Right. I'm the first Filipino-American commissioner on the Board of Public Works, which is my day job. You heard Melissa, Mayor Pro Tem, the first being in her role. Same for Mayor Todd Gloria. We want to be the first, but we don't want to be the last. We want to be the first of many. So let's build that pipeline. Please invest in our community by investing in our organizations. And that's my biggest thing I hope that everyone takes away from today.
Thank you, Jessica. So our mayor is very busy, so I know he has to go and say goodbye. Mayor Gloria, do you have any final remarks or just a quick line or anything you'd like to share before you leave?
Thank you, Alex. Yes, not my first Zoom, not my last Zoom either, to use Jessica's terms, but I would just double down on what she was sharing in terms of involvement. If I can tell a quick story, not too long ago, I promise. I first got involved in the Democratic Party at 13 years old. And going back to the question you asked a moment ago, Alex, I found a welcoming party, a party where I felt included and celebrated. And I hope that in addition to being proud Filipinos, particularly in this month, that we're proud Democrats, recognizing that our party does lift up our voices. We can always do better. And that ability to do better really depends upon all of us. And that's why I want to be here this evening, to pay respects to our elders who have created pathways for us to follow, to acknowledge that we're trying to do what we can, and to really reach back and encourage some of the folks who still have a contribution to make, to know that we'll be there to support them. Know that for those of you who are north of us, which is pretty much everybody, we're here. You have a friend, a supporter down here in San Diego that wants passionately to see more of our community represented at all levels of government. If I can be helpful, please let me know.
Salamat, Todd. Thank you very much. We are truly appreciative that you're here. Thank you, Mayor.
Bye, guys.
Have a good night. Okay, we're going to continue on. And this question is for our 3 panelists. And the question is, the Filipino-American community is the largest subgroup of the API vote in California. What can the party and our candidates do better to reach our community? What is the party and our candidates doing well when it comes to outreach or when it comes to campaigns in general? So actually, we'll start it off with Melissa.
Sure. Thank you, Alex. When I saw this question, I thought about how our community needs to do everything with intention. It's about reaching out when a brother, a sister, a sibling is running for office, getting appointed to these powerful positions. Like you, Alex, when you ran for LA City Council, I walked, I talked, and worked many days and climbed the steep hills of CD13. And I got a group of young Kaya Filipino Americans for Progress to raise money. And because we know that one of our own was running. So it's having that spirit of lifting our brothers, our sisters, our siblings who are having that intention to run and serve our community is so important. It's returning that favor when all of us want to reach that certain point of serving. And it's definitely having a mutual respect for each other and to ensure the endeavors of people who look like us will support and want to succeed. The party, we're making I've seen that through the last 12 years, it's been a slow pace, and then sometimes even regress, because it depends on what's happening within our politics. When we lose seats in Congress or we gain seats, I know the party has that intention to make sure everything is translated, or speaking truth to power of what our community is about. Having this tonight, I think, is the first ever that the party has done this. So just keeping that in mind, and having leaders like the Nates, the Jessicas, the Deepa Sharmas, and all of those leaders continue to advocate for our communities that don't have that voice. So the party, my hat definitely is also tipped off to you, because you are giving this space and making me feel all of us included, to further the intentions of many who look like us.
Thank you, Melissa. We're going to jump over to Nate.
Yeah, so I think, being out there, and like what Jessica has told was talking about earlier about, joining as a member, and I'm seeing it in the chat that we're not there in the Inland Empire. So I'll make sure to put someone out there and reach out to you, and that's how it begins. It's partially, I think it's actually our responsibility, especially as a caucus, not to ask people, hey, how can we help? We need to go out and find it. We have this past board election, the board expanded so that we could have more people throughout California, so that everyone has representation in different parts of California. And that's how we could outreach. Or just being there for someone that wants to get involved. I'll give him a shout out, Arnel Dino. A few years ago when President Trump was elected, I saw him at an event and I said, hey, I think you're involved in politics. How do I get involved? So I guess I could blame him for all these new responsibilities I have now, because I never knew that I'd end up being chair of the Filipino caucus. But it's because someone was there when they wanted to get involved, regardless of who you are, what you want to do. They introduce you to all these new things that you can become involved in, and hopefully have our voices heard. And so shout out to all the people who have been there for other people and helped introduce them to this new life of trying to help our own community. And so for that, I'm grateful, because the stories that you hear about the people who've been there to help others and joining our community is what makes us strong. And that's one of the favorite parts when I do get to see everyone in person in the Filipino caucus. It's like a big family. And so I think, I'm from Southern California. I know, I think more people up in Northern California from this. And so I'm honored, and I want us to continue to do that for everyone. So that's how we could outreach to everyone.
Thank you. We're going to jump over to Jessica.
Thanks, Alex. It's such a great question. And I think Melissa and Nate gave such great answers. And just to add to that, I will say one of the things that we fought really hard to get this year, and again, I have to give credit to our chair of the API caucus, Deepa Sharma, for fighting for the API phone list. And I can't stress enough how important that is, that our outreach is disaggregated by specific phone lists, so that the Filipino caucus, PALAD, is reaching out to Filipino voters. South Asians are able to call South Asian voters. Same is true for Japanese, Korean, Chinese community. And that was something that we also have to credit the party for doing, because I know that it's really hard work to disaggregate the API voters. Our community is diverse. We are not monolithic, and we have so many languages. We don't, unfortunately or fortunately, have just one language that we speak that represents all of us. And that's one specific thing that I hope the party continues to do more of, that I hope every candidate running has a multilingual communication strategy, because we need to communicate with everybody. And over half of our residents in LA County speak a language other than English. And if we're only providing materials in just one language, we're leaving a lot of people behind. And we're not that party. The Democratic Party does not leave people behind. And in order to create a party of even more belonging, I hope campaigns continue to do that. So that would be my one thing that I would add to what was already said.
Melissa, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, Jessica, and you know how that was so important for the API caucus, Filipino caucus, to get the data, to get the phone list. And that is something that we have struggled in the party, not only California, but nationally. And I want to mention, we just came out of the 2020 election, and never did we have before the DNC ever give us API lists to call, and I've gone through so many presidential cycles. Alex, I see you in Nevada every 4 years, and we never had our own data list.
That's a good point. Absolutely,
yes.
Yeah.
So to have it this past presidential was phenomenal. We probably broke.
It was like Pascal.
Yes. So yeah, and I think it's so important that we keep advocating. And I know CADEM, you're on the line, but we need to have that. It's so important to us because it'll be important for you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Melissa, and everyone else's answers. Thank you. So we're gonna close this, but we have our final question for each of you. And it's, Filipino-Americans have been a major force in the labor movement. Although the story is often not told, is there a particular leader or story that has resonated with you that you'd like to share with the audience? So we'll start off with Jessica.
Thanks, Alex. Such a deeply personal question. And I think when you said that, and when you asked that question, I thought of so many incredible people in the community, so many people who are on this chat that should be on this panel. And the only thing I wish about this event is I wish it was in person, hopefully next year. And for me, I'm gonna tell a story of somebody close to home here in Los Angeles. And I'm sure she'll be super embarrassed when I say this, but one of my sheroes that I would love to talk about and say more is Tita Jocelyn Giaga Rosenthal. And she is the founding president of the Filipino-American LA Democrats in 1987. And
she's on here, she's amazing, Jocelyn.
I just saw her, and what's amazing about Tita Jocelyn is that she never stopped. She founded PALAD with so many incredible Filipino leaders in the 80s, and she has never stopped organizing. She has invested her entire life to building the pipeline for people like me, for people like Melissa and Nate and you, so that we could be here and we can have the mic to take up space and tell our story. And so she is an historic Filipino town. And one of the reasons why I moved here as well, because I'm just inspired by her. And I want to continue to tell her story because she hasn't stopped. And the last quote that I'll share, because I think it's really powerful, is from a really good friend of mine. And I won't say her name so she doesn't get embarrassed, but she says that we are already powerful, but together we can be unstoppable. And I hope that that's what we all take away from today. We are already powerful, but if we all start working together more, we will be unstoppable and we will break those glass ceilings. So I can't wait to see all these new members that join all the caucuses that I just plugged, and PALAD and PAC, because we're going to get there and we're going to get there together. So thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Jessica. Big hug to Jocelyn. She's on. She is truly an inspiration. Now we're going to bounce over to Nate.
So when I was getting prepared to give the opening remarks, I was reading about Larry Leong, and he's the star, but it's not only him, because there's all the other people who were working in the fields, who were all the way from, our nurses, all of our different labor leaders and different unions, that they don't get kind of the attention because they're there working and, making sure everything keeps running. And so it's their stories. And I know she was very important in our community, Dawn Mabalan, and her telling our stories, but unfortunately she passed away early. But it's the important thing is to continue telling these stories. I think that even when I joined, I'm relatively new to the party like this, and I didn't even know some of these stories until I learned more about them and people told me about the people who came before. So it's not just one person, it's our whole community that we need to keep sharing the stories. So, we have Jessica talking about Tita Jocelyn. If we don't talk about her, only our small community knows about her. But we need everyone to know about these amazing people. And that's why it's not just, it just really shows, your question is about like which labor person or which one person, but it's a community effort. And that's something that I think that we need to stress and continue, is that these people who we don't hear about are the ones that we need to highlight and hear their stories.
Thank you, Nate. Now we're going to bounce that over to Melissa with the final closing answer to the question. So Melissa.
Well, actually, both of them took my answer. If it wasn't for Tita Jocelyn, I would have never made it onto the Filipino-American caucus. And then I would have never met the great Tita Alice Bulos, and then all the founding members of the Filipino caucus. And actually, the history of API caucus and Phil-Am caucus, there was a history where we didn't get along at some point. But to be on this Zoom and to like work together years later, actually it's like 40 years now, it's amazing. Like what Jessica said, if we work together and we can achieve more. And what to Nate said, talking about the labor leaders that who aren't always talked about, talked about Don Mabalan. I have the book here, and we always talk about Larry Itliong, who has a day. But there's so many stories of our labor leaders who, experience adversity, abuse, and we don't talk to them and talk about them enough. And if it wasn't for their history of being here, advocating and fighting, we wouldn't be on this. We wouldn't be on this panel. So it's a lot about learning about our history and celebrating this month. I have to give it up to the Filipino-American National Historical Society, which I'm a proud member of, who actually commemorated in 2009 this month and every year after. We wouldn't have this if it wasn't for them doing it in Congress. And quick plug, we're having our White House celebration of Filipino-American History Month on Thursday. So this month and this week, we have so much we're going to be celebrating and talking about our history. And, to end this evening with all of you and speaking about our personal stories and seeing all the lovely chats and shout outs and just love for our community. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I just want to say thank you to everyone that has put this amazing panel together. A big shout out to Vincent and India, and from the state party to everyone involved. Also, we need a state holiday for Jocelyn, for Jocelyn. But I just want, once again, thank you for all the panelists for joining, Jessica, Melissa, Nate, Mayor Todd, Gloria. Thank you, everyone. Maraming salamat. Buhay. So we're going to close this off, and I'm going to bounce this over to Nate. So thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, Alex. I mean, I can't say it much better than that. It's a great seeing everyone, even though we're not in person. Jessica, Melissa, I saw you guys about a month ago, but at least we could see. I saw you in person at Governor Newsom, but it's always nice to see a friendly face. So I'd like to thank all of you and the rest of our panelists and Alex for moderating. I'd also like to thank the California Democratic Party. They helped organize this, and behind the scenes, there's so much work that goes on that we don't hear about. So it's their work and their support staff and everything. So please contribute. We could help build future leaders. Donate to the party. Donate as much as you can. because it helps provide programs like this. And also join, like Jessica plugged, join all of the Filipino organizations. We all work together. And that's one of the strengths in our communities, that we work together. So please join all of those, join Paula, join Filipino Caucus, API Caucus, join boards, everything. Show the love to your Filipino communities. And with that, I just wanted to, plug one more time all the hard work our party does for all of us, and for everyone behind the scenes for everything that you do. Keep an eye out. I know there's a Diwali event coming up, I think in a couple weeks, so that should be maybe shared in the chat. There we go. November 3rd from 6 to 7. It is a great event that is coming up, and I enjoy these and seeing so many friendly faces. So thank you everyone for joining, and let's call it a night. Happy Filipino-American History Month.
Thank you. Thank you so much.